What's going on, everybody? Holy moly. My computer just freaking crashed like 2 minutes before we're going live. So that's no fun. So listen, as I log back in here and kind of get going things, I'm just curious. We like to hear, where's everybody from in the world? It's super awesome to hear like everywhere everybody's from. So we can throw some of you guys in here. I know we have people typically watching from the UK, LA. So 2 o'clock works really great because you've got, it's 7 o'clock in the UK. It's only 11 o'clock in LA and everywhere else in between. So that's pretty cool. Make sure you drop down below. I've got like 23 people already watching. We're just going to kind of let people flow in for a minute before we get in here. I got to reset a couple screens because I had a ton of cool stuff to share and it popped off. Holy moly. I think I'm going to get a new Mac. I think it's about time. It's been like, I've got like one that's 6 years old or something like that. Anyhow, David's watching from the UK. My UK people, I freaking love you guys. Honestly, I love the US. I really do. Obviously, I bleed red, white, and blue. But the UK people, you guys are like super kind. Every time I talk to somebody from the UK, it's like the nicest thing. The nicest, I don't know what that is. So anyways, let's see. I've got Gary and Allie from the UK, John watching from Mississippi. Thanks so much. Buck, you're watching from like 10 seconds away in Winter Garden. That's awesome. Steven's watching from Salt Lake City. David from Michigan. My people from Michigan, what's going on? That is awesome. I so appreciate it. Give me one quick second. We'll be ready to roll. All right, so today we're talking a lot about a bunch of things. We're going to talk a little bit about Shaq's house. I know like 200,000 people watched our video on Shaq's house. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with that. We're going to talk about new developments, both on the residential and the commercial side. Some really exciting stuff going on here in Orlando. We're going to talk about real estate in general. We're going to get into Q&A. I've actually got a guest for you guys today. We're going to talk a little bit about mortgage processes because I have a lot of people that ask me what's going on with the mortgage world and all of that kind of stuff. So that's really important with the rates kind of doing what they're doing. It's an interesting time. So we're going to dig into that today. And so thanks so much for, sticking with me for the first couple of minutes here. But let's dive in, I think, for the first thing here, which is Shaq's house. So I'm going to show you this with you guys real quick. So how many of you guys, let's see, NC, New Jersey, Virginia, Chicago, Newcastle, UK, Pasadena, California. What's going on, everybody? This is stinking awesome. I love it. All right, so let's dive in here. So I don't know if you guys heard, but we had Shaq's house was listed for $16.3 million. That's a couple dollars, if you will. Let me see if I can share this with you. Boom. So his house was listed for $16 million. And property actually went canceled. It went pending for a while and then came back to market and then all of a sudden went off the market. And so it's interesting to hear, if you guys have watched the video, we had like a ton of people talk about that property needed to be like updated significantly, right? It was like 31,000 square feet on 700 linear feet on Lake Butler. An amazing property, right? And you probably could have torn it down and put three properties in its place. The basketball court's amazing. There's so many cool things. So if you haven't looked at that video, make sure you check it out. Really, really cool place, but it needed like $3 or $4 million in work. And so when you look at it from a perspective of, if you're going to buy something for $16 million that needs $3 or $4 million in work, it should be at least worth $20 million after you're done with all of that stuff. And so it got an offer on it. My guess is that it wasn't anywhere near the $16 million, but then it went off the market. So it's interesting to see that would have been the highest sale in Central Florida for a really long time. And it didn't happen for whatever reason. And so at the end of the day, that thing's probably going to come back on the market. I don't know why he would hang on to it, but it's something to watch. And so I'm kind of excited about it. For those of you asking right there, the comments, if it was actually in Windermere. And so, Lake Butler, Isleworth, gated community, probably one of the premier neighborhoods in the entire Central Florida area. And we'll see what happens. If you guys, on Tuesday, I've got a new video coming out, the top luxury sales for all of Central Florida over the past year. And there were some amazing ones: Golden Oak, Isleworth, Maitland, Winter Park, some really, really cool houses that we're stoked about. So anyhow, let's get into a couple more things that I wanted to share with you guys today. Let's see. Boom. So there's a few things going on in Central Florida that I think are interesting to look at. One is, let's see how we do this. Boom. So 417 widening. This is a report that I pay for. This is like some back end stuff that I pay like literally thousands of dollars a year to find out which reports are getting reported at the county, like permitting and what's going on, because it's good for me to know as a real estate agent, like from the theme parks to residential to commercial, kind of what's coming in. Like my job is to make you guys the most informed audience in anybody that's interested in anything in Orlando. And so this is how I do that. So you've got one, this is a $60 million project that's going into permitting right now. This is actually going to be between Bogey Creek and Narcoossee off of 417. And so a lot of folks that live in the Lake Nona area, you're going to get a little bit of relief in that area. It seems like they're going to be planning for everything going on in that area. And so many of you guys that reach out to me live in the Lake Nona area and are moving to the Lake Nona area. So that's an interesting thing. I think Narcoossee needs to be next, because right now traveling down Narcoossee is a little challenging, especially around school time. And so we'll see kind of how things pop through on that. Here's an interesting one. I know I did a video on Dr. Phillips in O-Town West a little while ago, and some of you guys chimed in on that one. They started going through a lot of the permitting process on O-Town West, and right now there's like a White Castles and a Chicago hot dog place, and there's a bunch of other stuff coming in right now already. But this is for the next phase. And if you guys look right here, I don't know, Greg, I can see you backstage. Can you nod if you can read that fairly well on your screen? Yeah, okay. So right now they've got single family homes they're applying for, a recreational lake, man-made lake, apartments, retail, Action Gator Tire, a Wawa. And so all of that stuff is going into permitting right now. And it's looking like they're going to be moving forward with a quickness. So that O-Town West area is going to be quite amazing. If you're familiar with the Dr. Phillips area at all, it's pretty awesome. Actually, boom, let's check this out. I'll show you exactly where it's at in case you don't know. Somebody told me the other day, that's my nervous tick. I'm not really nervous. It's just like, fill the dead air. I don't know. What do you guys do for nervous tick? Let's see. Somebody asked, would it be possible to leave the chat up when the people watch the replay? I think so. I'm going to work on that, Annette. I definitely will work on it. Ned Kelly, this is my dude right here. Greg, if you don't know, man, this guy, Ned Kelly, he's always watching our videos and having really good insight and comments, man. Like there's some people that are just amazing to have in your life, and that's Ned Kelly. All right, so let's check this out. So we've got I-4, Sand Lake is right here. This is Dr. Phillips. Make this a little bit bigger for you. So you've got Sand Lake right here, big Sand Lake, little lake. And then right now there's no connection coming off right here. I think you guys can see that. Yeah, it looks pretty good on the screen. So right now this is all where O-Town West is going to be going in. This is where like literally $1 billion development's going in. They're also going to be doing an off-ramp here. And so instead of you having to go all the way up to Sand Lake and then down all the way to Popkin Vineland, they're going to have an off-ramp right here. And this is where all this stuff is going in. So really cool to see, again, like houses, apartments, a lot of retail. And then the other beautiful thing about that is like, why is that important? Because I know a lot of you guys are from the UK, or you're, buying a second home in Disney, that sort of thing. If you travel right down here, this is all Disney property. This is Bay Lake, Lake Buena Vista. And so having this right near you is actually going to be amazing of what's going on. So if you're not like, maybe you want to pop out of Disney Springs and you want to go try something a little bit different, this is kind of taking the spot for that. Next project up. What do we got here? This blew my mind. This is crazy. We're actually shooting a video this week on the villages and a little bit about why people live in the villages and all that kind of stuff. Look at this number at the top of the screen. They're getting ready to do a $3 to $4 billion development expansion in the villages. That blows my mind to begin with, because there's already like 100,000 people that already live there. And so they're looking at adding another 35,000 is what this said. I was going through some of the bid documentations here. Let's see. 13,000 acres, 35,000 residential units getting added to the villages. It's amazing. Like when you start thinking about $1 billion developments and then $3-4 billion developments, unbelievable what's coming on into the area. It's kind of crazy. Let's see. Here's another one. So Will tourism bounce back in Orlando? Yes, it will. It already has started. Not only that, but they're looking to extend our terminal. So like if you've flown out of MCO before, it's a little old, a little dated. They're getting ready to open Terminal C, but they're actually already budgeting for an additional almost $2 billion extension. Going through some of the notes here, it's going to make it a lot easier with a lot more airlines going internationally and domestically to make Orlando really that hub that's kind of like connecting the world. And I have a lot of folks that I had somebody from Germany this morning call me. I've had somebody from Ireland call me over the past week, just talking about wanting to go back and forth. And Orlando makes such a lot of sense being on the East Coast. It's a great climate, low taxes. There's so many cool things going on in Orlando. And so having them invest even more money in the airport to make it just that much better, I think is a really cool thing. A couple more stories for you guys today, a couple more insights on what's going on here while that loads. Let's see. Where are the Villages? Stephen Clark asks. So the Villages is a 55 and older community. It's about an hour from Disney. And it was started off as actually like a mobile home park. And now it's like the biggest 55 and older community in the world. They've got like golf carts everywhere and this amazing like HOA directors, there's multiple golf courses. I'm actually driving up there because somebody on my team specializes in that area and I want to get to know it a little bit better so I can kind of pass along more information. But when you hear about the amount of people moving there every day, it's now not a mobile home park. They build beautiful big homes there that, go up to, $1 million, that sort of thing, but quite amazing. All right, a couple more stories for you. For those of you that watch or old school watchers from the first live that I did, I talked about, hey, I had heard about Epic Universe was coming back to Universal and that they were going to do a whole new gate. And obviously they were doing that prior to the pandemic, but they shut it down completely during the pandemic. So I had told a couple of you guys that I'd heard that was coming back around. Well, you'll notice that this week it was actually fully they came out with the story that said they're finally moving forward. And it's funny because Orlando Sentinel came out with a story. They say that it promises quote unquote thousands of jobs. And I don't know why the Orlando Sentinel is always downer on what people say. But if you look at what Universal says, they basically say the exact same thing. They're coming out with 14,000 new jobs. They're investing $300 to $400 million in the first go around. And this is what it's going to look like. There's a little rendering. It's kind of cool. So another gate for Universal, that'll make 3 plus the water park on top of everything that Disney's going. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here in Orlando. I dig it. And the last theme park news I'll give you for today before we get into some real estate chats is, you guys see this Moana themed Disney Polynesian resort? So I'm a huge Grand Floridian Poly fan. We stay there even though we live here. It's a lot of fun. But the Poly started getting a little bit old. Let me know what you guys think down below in regards to what you think in regards to the Disney hotels. But the Moana themed Polynesian resort, I think it looks amazing. Looking through some of these photos, they did an incredible job reimagining this thing. Take a look there. Super, super cool. So we're excited. As soon as they're ready to start booking again, I think we're going to take the family there for a few nights. So, all right. So that's kind of the theme park update. Some of the more stories that I heard from behind the scenes, some of them haven't even made it to the news yet. So you guys are hearing it before anybody else, what's coming to the area. And I think that to me, it's exciting because if you're buying a house, you want to know what's in that area. Are you investing into the future? I talk about Lake Nona all the time and things that are going on over there, which is a big deal. But from Horizon West to the Disney area, if you're buying a second Airbnb, any of that stuff, you want to know that what you're investing in actually is going to pay off in the long run. And so, thankfully, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up a good friend of mine. He is a real estate mortgage broker. And I refer him a ton of business because he's good at what he does. A lot of you that are watching and past clients of mine have used him. So I'm going to bring up Greg Matthews with Certified Mortgage Planners. What's up, dude?
What's up, man? How's it going? Thank you for the kind introduction there.
Yeah, for sure, man. So you save my butt all the time because people are like, hey, what's going on with X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, that's a great question for Greg. So,
Ask Greg.
Yeah, for sure. Ask Greg.
I mean,
he's going to, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I say it all the time. Yeah, so right off the bat, dude, the thing with mortgages is everybody's waiting on us, right? Buyers, sellers, listing agent, buyer's agent, you guys all agree. You guys are ready to go. We're always waiting on financing. So that is the tricky part of the job. But it's also the fun part because I'm the center of attention sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. We get to lean on you, man, and say that it's all your fault for stuff, even though you do a great job. You do a great job. It's always the lender's fault, right? Yeah, exactly. So, man, tell me us a little bit about what's going on with the mortgage market right now. Like, where are rates headed? Are they going up? Are they going down? Staying steady? What's going on there?
Yeah, man, this is a great time to come on and talk about that, Ken, because things have been changing for sure. We've been in a very, very low interest rate environment due to COVID. I think a lot of people know that. Obviously, the Fed lowered short-term interest rates, and subsequently mortgage bonds have done very, very well. What happens is, as mortgage bond prices increase, creates higher demand and lower rates. And what's happening right now is just like the stock market's been pretty volatile. There's a lot of euphoria, but there's also a lot of scare and like worry about inflation. Same thing's happening in the mortgage bond market. So as mortgage bonds stabilize and they kind of trade at an equal, steady pace, rates are low, rates are fine. But when they start bouncing around, then lenders change their rates really quickly. So, I mean, man, just 2 weeks ago, I would say rates started ticking up a little bit. I think we can rebound, but yeah, I mean, the days of like sub 3 guaranteed, are kind of behind us, but rates are still at near historic lows other than COVID lows, so we're still a whole point basically lower than we were this time last year.
Yeah. And so, people talk a lot about affordability and what people should be looking at. Is this a bubble? Honestly, I look at affordability and the fact that, the money got so cheap allowed for people to jump on and buy something a little bit more expensive for less monthly payment. And I think that most people, all things being considered, when you're looking at down payment, obviously goes up the higher the price points get. But really, all things being equal, people are buying that monthly payment. And so much like a car, much like a lot of other things. And so when you look at the monthly affordability, it's actually still less today than it was 2 years ago, even though price points have jumped up 15%. And so it's kind of a wild thing. And so people ask, is it a bubble? I really don't think so. I mean, when you look at lack of inventory, just because of the overall number of homes that were never built, we talked about new construction a couple weeks ago on my last live on how like the number of new construction homes are like way below where they should be at this point because developers got behind and cost of goods and that kind of thing. So tell us a little about that, in regards to what you're seeing for affordability pieces and people and that sort of thing, like affordability for your clients.
No, you're 100% right, Ken. I mean, I talked to people before COVID that were starting to get pre-approved, and we were talking about, with where interest rates were at and the market, and that everyone wants to know how much is it going to cost me up front and what's my monthly payment. Those are the two most important things, right? I mean, if it's free, I mean, everybody would have just owned all, the big.
Well, that was 2005, right? 2000, it was exactly. Free and free. So just sign your here. Do you have a Pulse? Awesome, you get a house, right?
You get a house. You get a house. Yeah, it was crazy, bro. So, but yeah, so we're talking. I remember I have clients right now that actually I was talking to in like January, February of 2020 before COVID, and they were looking in a certain price point, say 300,000, and their monthly payment. We went through the numbers, and their monthly payment was in a range that was comfortable, but they were kind of on the fence. And then COVID happened, things changed. We just got them pre-approved last week again. And they're looking at a little bit higher price point and the payments are lower. And they're like, how is this possible? I'm like, it's the interest rate. People really don't understand the power of the difference in a 3% and a 4% interest rate. Just 1 point can make all the world of difference, like hundreds of dollars a month in expense. So yeah, man, rates have really made affordability kind of at an all-time high. I mean, and obviously the market has been going up, but we see that inventory being low and that demand is there. I mean, that's a stable market. And these loans are not the 2005, do you have a Pulse loans? Like these are fully verified, full documentation loans. I think it's a strong market.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. So Stephen Clark asks, so how long can you lock in an interest rate? That's a good question. So if somebody locks in, they call you, I've got an offer accepted. I don't close for 45 days. When should somebody lock in and how long are those good for?
Yeah. So there's different terms for how long you lock, and that could kind of adjust based on what the cost would be for that lock or what the rate would be itself. So if you're like going under contract and a close in 30 days, I would recommend definitely locking right away if you're within a 30-day window. If you're doing like new construction and you're 3-4 months out, you probably don't want to lock that rate for 120, 150 days because let's say the rate today might be 2.5%. But if you only want it locked for 30 days, it's 2.5%. If you want it locked for 150 days, it might be 2.8%.
Gotcha. So the
you're
longer
better
you
off
hold
floating
in,
it. Yeah, the longer you lock it, the more that cost is, or you would have to pay what we call like points up front. So you might have to pay $1,000 in order to keep that lock secured for 3 or 4 months. In a volatile market right now, if clients are, going under contract at 45, 60 days, it might be worth it to lock now if it makes sense, if the payment still makes sense, just because it can bounce so much. But in a stable rate environment like we saw all of 2020, and we hope we'll see, some more stability through 2021 at some point. Typically, if it's beyond 60 days, we call that floating the rate. You just float it and see what happens with the market. If the rates start to get really bad, then I call the client and say, hey, we got to lock in right away. It's going to be a little bit more costly, rather than 2.6, you're getting 2.7 now, but at least we keep you from potentially going to 3 or 4%, right? So it's a strategy. It's a game. It's a game, man. It's fun. Sometimes it can be stressful. Yeah.
And it's, we do our best. Like, we don't try, like, I tell clients, whether it's getting into a multiple offer situation, whether it's, doing whatever you can, we're doing the best we can with what we have in front of us, right? None of us have a crystal ball. Right. Could the market go down? Could it go up? We don't know. We're going to do the best we have with what we have in front of us. And so that's what you help your clients do, locking in the rate and that kind of thing. Tell me a little bit about down payments. So a lot of our clients, I would say 30% of our clients are buying second homes. So tell us a little bit about, real quick, the down payment versus like the interest rate. You don't have to quote it because we want this video to be evergreen, but like ballpark on down payment and downtown rate for like a second home right now, what would that be?
Yeah. So a second home, the great advantage, everyone, for a second home is that it is the same interest rate as a primary residence. They are identical rates. When it's an investment property that is specifically for the purpose of getting a long-term tenant, renting it out, making money, then it's a little bit different. But for a second home, a vacation home, you're going to come spend some time here, go to Disney World with your family, and kind of rent that out periodically. That second home, that's going to have the same rate as a primary residence. With the volatility, it's kind of crazy right now. I'd say around the 3% range or so.
Yeah. What about down payment?
And the down payment, the minimum down payment is 10%. You would still have mortgage insurance on it unless you put down 20%. But yeah, you can get a second home for 10% down, $400,000 second home for 40 grand down.
Okay. And so how does the bank delineate the difference between like, if I've got an investment property 5 miles away or 2 states away, how do they know if it's a second home? I'm just curious, what I tell them, or is there like a proximity to your current house to where if it's a vacation home or not? How do they know?
Yeah, I'm laughing because this is a tough question that we get a lot, and it's an important question for sure. Like, occupancy status is very important, but I read an article the other day, just like kind of refreshing on it, and it's like, the article is like, if you talk to 5 loan officers about the difference in a second home and an investment property, you're gonna get 5 different answers. And it's true. I mean, it's just a weird thing on what is the intent? What is the real intent? Is it to be a second home that you spend a lot of time with your family? Or is it really intended to be an investment where you're getting a long-term tenant in there? If you're doing a vacation home, second home, where you're spending a few weeks out of the year here and you're going to rent it out on Airbnb a couple of months or, a few days out of the month, that's no problem, right? But what truly equates to an investment property, I would say, is when you're planning to put a listing out the week after you buy it for a long-term 12-month tenant. That you're going to get in trouble if you're saying it's a second home. As far as proximity to your house, it's got to kind of make sense. We have a rule of thumb of like 50 miles. Sometimes they say 25 miles, depending on the area, right? If you have like a penthouse in New York City and you want a place, over in Long Island, only a few miles away, that can still be a second home. But, here in Florida, you'd probably be talking, if your primary is in Orlando, you can get a beach condo. It might only be 25, 30 miles away. But, so there's exceptions with that. But the general rule of thumb is 50 miles away for a second home.
Okay, cool. Well, dude, thanks for joining us today. If I'll drop your information below. I know a lot of you guys, if you're working with us, Greg's our go-to guy. He's working with me on the weekend, so that's cool. He's definitely accessible, but he's just a great guy overall. I've really not had any bad things to say. So we'll make sure we get your information below. Do you want to hang out and just answer a couple of questions with me for the next little bit?
Dude, I'll hang. You're a fun guy. You're having a good time. Everybody's engaged. Let's hang, dude. Let's have a good time. Awesome.
Let's do it. So here we go. Let's go. All right. So let's get into some questions here, guys. So I know a lot of things that you guys chat about. Golden Oaks, Tyler, Golden Oaks, who would want to leave? Speaking of Golden Oak, there's only 3 more lots left. That's insane to me. The fact that there's literally 1% left of the neighborhood. And then the other thing I know a lot of you guys have followed me for is Island Village with Celebration. It was supposed to be released last week is what it was supposed to be last year, but then with pandemic and all that kind of stuff, it slowed down. And so Island Village is now, they're talking mid to late April is what they're thinking about releasing. And here's the crazy thing. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of people on this waiting list. And there's less than 300 available lots in phase one. So make sure you reach out if you have questions on how to go about that. It's a just crazy experience. They haven't even talked about how they're going to do it. Is it going to be a lottery? Is it going to be just first person who shows up? Back in the olden days when things were super crazy, I would spend the night to get in line first for my clients. You don't remember those days, do you, Greg? You're too young. I can say that
Sorta.
now. I'm kind of old. Anyways,
I'm seasoned, but not
seasoned veteran. All right. So RJ asks, what areas will become closer to Claremont once the Western Way connector is open? So really Horizon West is going to be closer, right? So right now you have to pop through. We've talked about this on previous sort of deals here. Let me grab this real quick. So right now, I'll open this up. All right, cool. So right now this is Horizon West and basically Hickory Nut, and you've got all of Claremont out here. All of this is super hard to get to because you got to drop down to like 192, kind of go over and then back up around if you want to get just to Disney or anything. So that drive can be, 25, 30 minutes, which isn't terrible. But like right now, the connector is going to pop through down over here, get you over to Western Way. So then we can get into Disney within 15 minutes. And it's going to be a pretty cool thing.
And that's going to be huge for the market too, right, Ken? I mean, building that infrastructure, like you talked about in the beginning, I mean, all these projects, that's just going to continue to keep property values growing.
Yeah, I mean, so I think about, how do I get rid of this thing? There we go. So you think about the that Claremont area right now. You can still get a house in like between 300,000 and 400,000 fairly easy. I think that, and really because so many people are getting priced out of Horizon West, because really to get into Horizon West on the low end is 400 and goes up to 1.5 million or so. I think that's very quickly going to take that Claremont area, and like you mentioned, like it's going to make prices, I believe, go up because the more accessible something is, the lower your drive time is, the more desirable it'll be, and then all of a sudden it's going to pop up to where like you're having to pop up to say Groveland or something. Actually, somebody else mentioned this. Let's see. Let me go up here. JJ asks, so is Groveland a good area to buy a single family house? Again, it comes down to proximity and drive time. If you're working from home, Groveland's a great place to be. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, like you can get a good house for less money, closer to the lakes, all these kind of the cool things up in that Claremont, Groveland area. Yeah. But it's just harder to get to stuff, What do you think, Greg?
But for sure, man, because that's the thing about, I mean, any kind of big city. I think Orlando's going to be on the map on scale of like a Miami and Atlanta in the, who knows, decade or so to come. So especially if you have that remote work from home, like you're close enough to get to things if you want to in a Groveland, but also, if you're working remotely, you have that ability to be kind of a little bit more secluded at the time. But the expansion's crazy here. So, I mean, before you know it, like you said, that connector through Claremont to the back of Disney is going to be huge. Groveland's very close there. I saw a beautiful house listed probably 2 weeks ago in Groveland. It was like 4,000 square feet, backed up to a lake, infinity pool. It was listed at like 400,000.
Shut up.
So the value's definitely there, man.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's the thing. You lock in, and I don't know if you remember, like when I first moved here, people were like, Horizon West is way out there. Like I can't believe anybody would drive all the way to out there when you could live in Dr. Phillips or Windermere, right? Now there's Horizon West is what it is. It's huge and people love living there and it's easy. And I think Groveland, Claremont, all those places become that in a very short order, especially with how many people moving here. Yeah. I had a question for you. This guy says, let's see. Hey, Jay Peak, you had a mortgage question. Why don't you send that to Greg? Greg, your email is Greg at give him your email real quick.
Yeah. It's Greg at cmpfl.com. That's C Charlie M Mary P Paul F Frank L Larry.com.
Cool. So they had a very specific like mortgage refinance question, and I think it'd be better for you to talk to them directly. John Delancey asks, is there a typical price difference between building, including lots and lot premium, and resale for equivalent home? That is an amazing question because I get this almost every day. New construction is typically going to be slightly more expensive than resale. I will say that if you get into new construction, though, you're not having to do a lot of multiple offers. So, whereas market value of a house might be 500,000 and a comparable new construction might be 525. Well, the things being the way that they are right now, you might end up paying 525 for a resale anyways, because of multiple offers get driven up. You pay more than market value, but statistically, it's always been that new construction is a little bit more expensive than resale. Being that like the market that we're in right now, which is I've never seen anything like this before. They're almost on par. But the fact that you can go into new construction and not have to bid against anybody is huge. The last thing I'll say about that, though, is that so many of these builders, they're throttling. Have you heard this, Greg?
I heard a little bit about it.
Yeah. So basically they're like, hey, typically, we're selling, 5, 10, 12 houses a month in some of these neighborhoods. And they're all of a sudden like, listen, our boss has said that we're running out of land too fast and new construction costs are going up so fast. We can't lock in these people for long term. So we're just going to sell 3 houses a month now.
I've heard that.
So
3.
That's crazy. I mean, some of these neighborhoods with 6, 7, 800 homes, and now all of a sudden they can only sell 3 a month because they're trying to what we call throttle. And so some of them are just pulling a name out of a hat. Other ones are going with the most qualified buyer. Some of them are just whoever came in first. Every builder's different. Every neighborhood's different. It's just a crazy time out there.
Pull the name out of a hat.
I kid you not. A builder somebody told me about the other day. Well, somebody told me about the other day. Hey, yeah, we just throw all the names in a hat and then see what happens. I'm just like, oh my gosh, what a crazy time.
Wow.
What a crazy time. All right, so let's see. Going through some of these questions here. So Off to Disney says, do I think the Brightline to Disney Springs may make the Lake Nona area more attractive than it already is? I do. I mean, I do. That Brightline's going to be cool. Have you heard about this going on, man? Like they're taking away potentially the Magical Express, or you're going to have to eventually pay for the Magical Express, and the Brightline's coming in to like connect all the way to Disney Springs, which I think would be cool. Have you heard much about it?
I did not know that they were connected to Disney Springs. No, I've heard obviously the project. We were just talking about what they're building, the terminal near the airport there, obviously to go down to like Miami and stuff. I think that's long term, but no, I didn't hear about this with Disney Springs. So it goes from airport.
Yeah, airport to Disney Springs and then on to Tampa and then over to Miami. That's eventually the route. And so, I mean, Orlando's not known to be very connected of a place, right? It's really quite hard to get around.
Yeah, we say Orlando's 30 minutes away from Orlando.
Exactly. So like if you don't have a car, you're pretty, and buses are hit or miss, right? You're very car dependent in most areas of Orlando. So I think some like the Sunrail we have that runs up and down from like Winter Park up to Lake Mary and that kind of thing.
But the hours are limited and stuff too.
Yeah. It's not super. It's not something that you can like use very easily, and so because of that, it's not, we need something like the Brightline to come in and make it much more accessible through the whole area. For sure. All right, let's see what else we got here. Here we go. So Carrie asks, what are your thoughts about buying in a golf course community where the golf course is currently closed down, WG Claremont? Is that a bad idea? So Carrie, there's actually a development over in Horizon West area, or I guess more like up towards Winter Garden Village. I'm blanking on the name right now. It's off of 417.
Stony Brook West?
Yes, exactly. Dang, look at you. So
I grew up here, man.
That's right, man. So listen, so that whole neighborhood the golf course shut down. And so you had these houses that backed to golf course property that used to get a $75,000 premium. And now you don't get that anymore because it's 2 foot tall grass, And so there's all of these plans in a lot of these neighborhoods. There's another one in Windermere, the old Windermere Golf Club shut down. And so you have to figure out what's going to be behind you and understand in the value differentiation, because like, are they going to be building houses behind you? Are we just waiting for another developer to come along and fix the golf course? Can they build commercial behind you? Most of the time they can't. But like I know in some cases, like the Windermere Golf Course that I just told you about, the owner of the golf course went to get it redeveloped so that they could put houses behind it. So all of a sudden, instead of backing to a golf course, you would back up to someone else's home. Thankfully, the city and the county turned them down, but it's dicey. And so I think that you always go looking at the worst case scenario. And if you can live with that worst case scenario, then do it. I wouldn't say that you're ever going to be banking on the fact that it's just going to be this pristine golf course behind you again. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. Golf courses are beautiful. I grew up in Sweetwater Country Club in Northwest Orlando area, like Apopka, and Sweetwater has been going, up and down. And there's a few other golf courses around there that shut down. And some of the values got hit a little bit. But I would say that, when these courses shut down in the mid 2000s, or probably around, 2008, 2009 recession, the values have already bounced back from, where they were hit, right? Because the market, there's such a high demand here. I think Stony Brook is still kind of in that phase of dealing with that. So if you can see that through, I think long-term, they're going to find a solution to create, additional value in other ways for those properties. But yeah, I mean, if you have a golf course view and all of a sudden you're going to have apartment complex view, it's not as appealing, but
not nice.
Not
but
awesome. Overall, so if the golf course part of it is important to you, you should do it because you want to be around a golf course. If it shuts down, you might get an initial hit, but long-term, I think you're still going to be okay. And the valuation side, that's the part that you're worried about, right? So.
Yep, I agree. Ned Kelly, our boy from the UK, our dude from the UK, he says, has realtors and mortgage brokers got a better reputation in the States than they have here in the UK? No, they're not. So this is an interesting statistic. So there's 23,000 realtors in all of Central Florida. And while I would never, ever talk badly about my co-workers, people that are also in my industry, I would tell you that 5 years ago, that number was like 16,000. And so you've got a lot of people that have just now gotten the business. They have not ever seen a good market, or they've only seen a good market. They haven't seen a bad market. They're not pulling from a lot of great experience. And so, Craig, this is a crazy stat. I think I've told you this one. So in 2019, I remember hearing that the Orlando Realtor Association said that 70% of all realtors sold 0 to 1 home in the past year. And so I equate that to, if I was going to get a heart transplant and I had to choose from the doctors that were like doing 1 a day versus 1 a year, which one would you go with? Probably the one that's doing a little bit more business. And so, Ned, it's super important to talk a little bit about the person that you hire, that they're experienced and that they know what they're talking about before you get into it. And same thing with mortgage brokers. Yeah,
for sure. That is exactly what the CEO of Certified Mortgage Planner says, man. He equates it to like a heart surgery. He's like, are you going to go to someone that is right? He uses like proximity kind of thing. Like, are you going to go to someone that's right here in Lake Mary because that's where our main office is? Or is he going to are you going to make that drive to Orlando for the best? Your mortgage, your real estate, this is the biggest financial purchase that a majority of people are going to make, is investing in real estate. Are you going to make that purchase with a real estate agent and with a mortgage broker that doesn't have that track record, that doesn't have, that background? No, you're going to go to the person that's the best for that good surgery, right? Yep. You're going to drive to Orlando. You need to do the same for your realtor or mortgage broker. But that's a crazy stat, man. I did not know that stat, dude, on the 0 to 1 home.
Unbelievable.
70%. That is crazy. I
Jay Robbins said, Jay Robbins, he's another real estate agent. Obviously, he says real estate. What if the heart gave you free, doctor gave you free heart surgery? I would still probably turn him down, right?
I would turn him down. Yeah. No.
So
I'll take the debt. I'll take out the big debt. Go to the top guy for
sure.
Go
to the top guy, exactly.
Or lady. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Jeff, you asked. So you're getting nervous about my plan to move from Orlando to Orlando from California. I was hoping to get a home in Island Village, but maybe I should consider buying an older property. It's going to be, there's going to be eventually enough homes for everybody. It's just going to be a waiting game on a lot of this stuff. There's a lot more older homes available that you can easily scoop up because a lot of folks don't want to have to do the renovations. And that's everywhere in Central Florida. So whether you're looking in Celebration or not, everywhere around Central Florida, there's areas with aging homes that are now 15, 20, 25 years old, and they're slightly less desirable than the new construction. If you're like nervous about like, hey, when am I going to have a spot to lay my head? Well, then there's going to be a house for you. We're going to find one, whether it's on the market or off the market. Just understand that like Island Village, it's going to be a crazy, crazy time for the first probably 2 or 3 months. And then once phase 2 and 3 and 4 open up, eventually we're going to get you something worst case scenario. It's just, locking in at today's interest rate on a house in Celebration, doing some renovations might make more financial sense than waiting for, a year or 2 down the line to finally get into Island Village. But we'll see. I mean, like they keep saying there's thousands of people waiting. I know I have hundreds of people that have reached out to me over the past couple of years, but we'll see how the first couple of weeks go and then kind of shake out from there. So what I would say is, long story short, don't lose heart. There's going to be options for you, and we'll make sure you're in the best spot possible. So someone asked, I just lost it here. Someone asked about, should they be, here we go. So Dev Grew, this is a good question for you. Looking to move back to the area, would you suggest rent versus buy for the time being and see what happens to the housing market? So here's my overall blanket statement that I say for this. And this, if it was me, true to life, this is exactly what I would do. If you think you're going to move back to the area and stay here for 3+ years, you should buy now. Lock in the low interest rate, lock in today's pricing, because even if it goes down, like even if values go down, you'll ride it back up on the other side, right? If you think I'm just going to test Orlando and just kind of see what I think, renting makes sense. Get an apartment, get a short-term rental, do whatever you need to do to get into the area, get into lifestyle here locally. But I think that 3+ horizon is kind of where it makes a lot more sense to lock in today's rates, pricing, on and on and on, tax advantages, all of that kind of stuff. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I would say the same thing, Ken. That's spot on, man, for sure. I get a lot of people that have this question. I mean, we've been having a lot of out of state buyers coming through, and they're on the fence on, do we want to get a rental? Do we want to, especially like, I mean, I hear that I'm asking about the job and things like that. So there's so many things changing when they're moving from out of state. So that is a great point, though. If Orlando's in your long-term plan, now is a great time to buy. Like we've talked about on this entire show, rates are at historic lows still. The values are probably only going to continue to go up. We don't have a crystal ball, but I mean, that's the way that it feels based on the infrastructure and the demand. Yep. So yeah, if it's in your long-term plan, now's a great time. But I'm on the mortgage side, man, I say the same thing to people. I'm like, if you're on the fence and you're not sure, there's nothing wrong with getting a short-term rental, especially if it sounded like that question came from somebody that lived here and knew the area. Right. So they might have a little bit more insight, but someone that doesn't know the area, man, the suburbs range wide in Orlando. It is a spread out place. And there's a lot of areas to test out that you want. Yep. I mean, you had your video, Winter Park versus Windermere. I mean, they both have their advantages and disadvantages, but it's a drive. So like if you live in one and you like stuff in the other, that might be a little bit of a problem, right? So yeah, feel for Orlando is still is it's not.
I think it's smart. Either. Yeah, I think it's smart. I really do. And the funny thing is, like, I don't think most agents aren't saying that. Most mortgage brokers aren't saying that. They're saying just, it's always a good time to buy.
Yeah, they're trying to transact. I mean, that bothers me, man.
Yeah, it really does. I was meeting with somebody yesterday, and, they had been talking to me for 2 years. They came here, rented. In the meantime, they referred us people. But like for me, it's like the relationship matters so much more than like a quick sale. I think that's what sets you and I apart. So
100%, man. And I know that's true for you, and that's why I love working with you, because you're truly an advisor, and that's what you need in your real estate agent. You need an advisor that's going to advise you on it, not just try to get you to sign a contract, right?
Yeah, agreed.
We're excited when you guys do want to sign a contract. But that's for sure. Your decision based on the advice, right?
Please eventually buy or sell a house with us. It's totally fine. That's eventually what we want you to do. But we want it to be on your terms and what's best for you and your family and that sort of thing. All right, let's dig back in some more questions. We got a lot more. So with all the development going on, are they building government buildings like fire stations, post offices, and serving these new developments? So I believe the county code requires fire departments and police stations within certain proximities. I know a lot of that's going in our local area. Unfortunately, post offices are very underserved in our area. So I know for us, if we have to get our closest post office is probably 25 minutes away here in Horizon West where we live. That's something on all of our boards we're always talking about. I wish there was something closer, but there are like UPS stores and FedEx stores and all of these other ones popping up everywhere. So if I had to go 2 minutes away and get something shipped out, I could, no problem. But some of the more government side of buildings on the federal side are taking a little bit longer.
That was a really good question.
That was a very good question. So what do I think about Meridian Park's development? I think there's a perfect place for my family since about 30 minutes away from Disney and 30 minutes from UCF. I agree, Jose. I think it's a great development. So what's happening in Lake Nona, because it's building out so fast that, people are pushing over to St. Cloud, pushing up to Moss Park, Meridian Parks. And I think it's a great option when you can get something brand new for the price point. Meridian Parks is much more affordable than say like Laureate Park. And so you've got Mattamy Homes. They build a good mid-sized building. And so, I know that they're out of lots right now until the next phase gets released, but there's a lot of good options there. So let's know.
Shout out Mattamy Homes.
Yeah. Mattamy. What up? They're also doing Island Village. Get it together. No, I'm just kidding. Here's a good one. Greg. So these folks are obviously Brits, and they're saying, is it easy or hard to get a loan for somebody who's not a US citizen?
Yeah, man. So that's a great question. Foreign national loans are a little bit different, a little bit trickier than for U.S. citizens or permanent residents. But we have this really great program that we actually just had a conference call on Thursday with this lender. that they're opening up what they call the Noni. It's the no owner, no income. So it would be one for like an investment purpose or like kind of a second home, vacation home, which is what most foreign nationals are purchasing for to make some money on. And man, it's awesome. I mean, there's still a few hoops to jump through, but we can use just as long as you have a U.S. bank account and like 3 trade lines, like credit, whatever the credit would be in the country that you're from. If you can prove your credit, like you're paying your car, your mortgage, whatever, in that country, have a U.S. bank account with seasoned funds. I mean, it's like a no documentation as far as like income and things like that makes it a lot easier. And these rates are really competitive, man. I mean, you're not going to be in the 3% where, a U.S. citizen buying a primary is, but you're not going to be in the 10-12% that some of these hard money lenders are. You're going to be in the
used to be that high,
5 to 7%. Yeah.
They used to be
they used
8,
to be
9,
that
10%. And now the fact that you can get something for 5, 6, 7, it's like seems like a dream, But the fact that you don't have U.S. credit, U.S. established employment, all that stuff, and you can still get a mortgage, it's pretty impressive. So
it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I know there's certain lenders that like they specialize in just the international loans and that kind of thing. So it's definitely an interesting product for sure.
More COVID tightened some of that stuff up, but they're starting to loosen it now again. So good programs coming back.
Agreed. So 2 people actually mentioned this, and I thought I'd mention it real quick. So Renee mentioned that her son just bought downtown, first person 12 offers. Wrote an owner to the letter and bingo. And then Bobby mentioned, hey, listen, can you speak to that a little bit? So interesting thing, Renee, is that things are starting to change with fair housing laws, and where a buyer love letter could actually be, for those of you who don't know what a buyer love letter is, like you write a letter to the seller and you say, hey, listen, I've got a family. I notice you have a family. We would love to have our family live in this house, and it would be great, right? And so there's multiple offers and on and on. We've actually done this for years. Greg, I'm sure you've seen it on like the mortgage side if people talk about it. But now it's kind of coming across where certain states are outlawing it, and they're pointing to the fair housing laws saying like, listen, if somebody chooses your offer because of age, sex, religion, any kind of background that's on the fair housing protected list, that's a fair housing violation. You can actually it can actually become a really big deal. And so agents, like we've tried to do a couple things of just like, if you're going to write a letter, it has to be very specific that it doesn't touch on any of those points. I noticed that I came in your house. I love your layout. I love your finishes. It seems like you have a lot of care in your home. I would care for your home as well. Being like you have to be very specific on how you write it so that us as agents and you as a buyer aren't going against fair housing. So that's an interesting thing to kind of go through today when you start thinking about how things are changing, right, Greg?
For sure, man. Yeah, that is crazy. Especially in a multiple offer situation, those letters can stand out. Buying and selling a house is an emotional process. I mean, my parents still live in the house that I grew up in 26 years. Like when they go to list it, that's going to be an emotional process for mom. If she gets a letter from somebody saying, I see that your family grew up here, mine saying, I mean, it can affect the decision. And it's a fine line with the fair housing for sure. So
yeah, it really is. All right, let's keep rolling here. We got a lot of good ones. All right. So what states would you say that most people are relocating here from Orlando? My buyers, and we work with a lot of buyers. We're very buyer heavy. I would say we're probably 70% buyers and 30% sellers at this point. For us, it's a lot of California, Midwest. So Michigan, Ohio, a lot of Midwest. Like I'm from Michigan. Obviously I came here, but I've got a lot of Michiganders coming down to follow us. And so it's a lot from New York, Jersey, seeing a lot from Virginia lately. That Chicago, Midwest area though is.
Yeah. You're a trendsetter. So
I'm a trendsetter. I figured it all out. I say I got lucky. I mean, we love Disney and we love Florida. So we thought it would be a good decision. And then we looked back 5 years from, ago and we're like, man, we made a great decision. Let's go. Let's go.
Sir.
All right. So Eric asks, do I think that it's possible to find a new construction with an in-law suite? Yes, definitely. There's a bunch of builders now doing multi-generational stuff as well. So you can have a full suite like kitchen, bathroom, living room, bedroom, all that kind of stuff that's attached with the house. But then you can also do like a casita as well. So depending on the price point you're looking at, I was just showing houses this morning in Lake Nona. We were looking at houses with garage apartments above them. So there's plenty of those options depending on what you're looking for. If you want it attached, if you want it on the same level, all of those kind of things. But yeah, just shoot me a message and we can even look for those. Go ahead.
Who are the top builders that you're seeing that have those options or the best at doing it?
So if it's like the apartment ones, like it's a lot of the ones over in like Laureate Park. So Ashton Woods, David Weekley, those are some of the major ones. Lennar, who I'm like not the biggest fan of, but they have a lot of land and they're building a lot of houses. So I have to talk about it. They do probably in terms of layout, like one of the best second generation or multi-generation houses for layout. K Hovnanian is also doing it. They have a second gen product or next gen product. It's yeah, they're really cool. They're like obviously a little bit more expensive, right? You're adding another kitchen, another bathroom, another all these other things. But for a lot of people, they can do dual income that way, right? Mom moves in, she's living off, she's putting down. I had a really good buyer consultation this week. Some people moving up from West Palm Beach, and they're like, "Hey, mom's going to live with us. She's paying off her house is paid off, so she's going to sell it, take that cash, put that down on our house, but we want a multi-gen house." And so that happens a lot right now. I think it's
whether you want to have family members or like, an Airbnb is becoming bigger too. If you're trying to cash flow some things, I think that's going to be big. I didn't even think of that on the new construction perspective, but I imagine that would be big in the future.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Steven, you asked a good question. So am I taking on new clients personally or just for my team? So my team's we have a team of specialists. And so depending on the area of Orlando, I do still work with clients. I still sell multiple homes every single week personally. But if you're like buying up in the Villages or you're buying over in Oviedo or some other areas, I do have team members, and Greg's worked with some of my team members. Like I don't just bring on anybody. We have somebody probably reaching out to join our team almost every day, and we turn down significantly more people than we allow on our team. So we vet them very, very strongly to make sure that if I do refer you to a team member, you can know that they're like a total rock star. So you've worked with like a lot of our team members as well.
Yeah. I mean, probably almost everyone on the team, and they're all awesome. I mean, just so on point and strategically placed. Like you said, like geographically, like you probably would love to serve everybody, but you can't. So like Orlando's so spread out. So they're all strategically placed. I mean, anywhere in the Central Florida area, Pozek Group's got you covered. Yeah,
we really do. We're expanding all the time. So it's been really good. So Greg, you asked, speaking of Oviedo, what are my thoughts? So, I mean, I think Oviedo's great. I think it's a little bit far out there for most people. So if you're into if you want to be super close to Disney or you want to be super close to downtown, probably not ideal for you. But if you want to be up near UCF, you just want, good schools, new homes, but like decent prices. That's another area that's like very affordable. And so it's just a whole nother vibe. But like, I think the reason why it's affordable is because it's a little bit farther out. And so nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of take it for what it is. It's very similar to if you said you're moving to Apopka, Groveland, any other way, they're farther out. And so because of that, prices are a little bit low, but Oviedo in particular has fairly well-rated schools and that kind of thing. So anything you want to say about that?
For sure. Yeah, no, Oviedo, I grew up playing them in baseball. They had a great baseball team. So if you're into sports, and near UCF. So yeah, no, Oviedo's a great spot.
Yep. Scott asks, speaking of Golden Oaks, is Four Seasons building again? So they're sold out. So the Four Seasons is gone. They have a resale in there. It's escaping me what this resale name. It's listed for $8 million right now in there. But yeah, all of the homes in there are gone. Crazy enough, dude. Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts. Okay. Yeah. How many homes were there in there?
So in all of Golden Oak, it was like 299. I think it was 17 houses or so back in Four Seasons. But those were all like the more expensive, homes. But those are all gone. It's kind of wild.
Wow. Yeah. I saw it was probably 2-3 years ago when it was really, really big that people were posting about a lot. Maybe even just last year. So, yeah.
Well, dude, I talked about it the other day. I mean, the amount of people that have moved there over just the past year. I mean, I've got friends that run, the on-site sales center, and I help buyers in there as well. And I remember they were telling me for the longest time it was like they would sell a house a month, and then all of a sudden it's like through the pandemic it was like, yeah, we sold 6 houses last month. Like what just happened, overnight. So they went from, crazy increase. You look at, again, I did this video, we're releasing it on Tuesday about I talked about the 5 top sales in Orlando, but really we dove into the luxury market. Dude, just 2 years ago, we had a 4-year supply of homes over $1 million. Like Isleworth, for example, had like a 4.5-year supply of homes. Like it was just a very strong buyer's market in there. And now they have like a 2-month supply of homes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's a tough price point sometimes.
So, I mean,
for it to be that low on inventory and that price point.
Yep, exactly. Jim asks, does Eagle Creek have more land to build new homes? Yeah, there's Jones Homes is still building in there. I was just there 3 weeks ago with a client, and they still had some lots left. It's a big neighborhood, really big neighborhood. And so obviously, Lake Nona area, you're gated right off Narcoossee. So getting in there is a little tough, but once you're in there, it's a great gated community with a beautiful amenity center and that sort of thing. So feel free to reach out. All right, let's see. We had a lot of questions today. As soon as I'd stop to look at the camera, like 5 of them would pop by me. So, all right, this is a good question. So Zach, I know you touched on short-term rentals market a bit, but could you explain how the long-term market rental is right now? And maybe any predictions? It's a great question. So when people call me and ask about buying a short-term rental, it's honestly not like the best investment. I always say, are you buying it because you want to offset your second home, or are you buying it because you want the best ROI? Because if you want the best ROI, long-term rental is the way to go. Because by the time you Airbnb out, you pay a rental company, a management company, they take 30 to 40% off the top. There's just not a lot left. And so if you're really looking for like the best ROI, long-term rentals are great. So overall in Central Florida, where they're building apartment building after apartment building after apartment building because they're trying to build some sort of like affordable housing, and that's the way they do it. That being said, like our rental market is extremely strong right now. And so if you're looking to get into investing, it's not quite like if you've ever read like Rich Dad Poor Dad or these financial books, they talk about the 1% rule, meaning that if you buy, say, a $300,000 house, it should rent out for $3,000 a month. We're not there anymore. It's really more like you buy a $300,000 house, it rents out for $2,300 a month. So the ROI isn't as tight as it used to be. But when you start thinking about tax advantages, long-term, someone else is paying it off, you have to put down a little bit more money anyway. So you probably still have a little bit of cash flow or at least a break even. Anything you have to say about that, Greg?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Ken, 100% on that. When you look at short-term rentals, such a headache. Yeah. I mean, you really, when you're looking like second home, vacation home, rent out the Airbnb when you're not there, but it really should be more for personal use. And if you're looking on an investment standpoint, long-term rental is the way to go. 100% would agree with that. But yeah, it is interesting that like everyone talks about rent is so high, but the values are pretty high too. So you probably are a little bit below that 1%. But if you're positive cash flow, someone's paying off that mortgage for you. I mean, man, great investment for sure.
Yeah, agreed. So crystal ball, let's see. Crystal ball time buying power. How eroded would $500,000 be a buyer today versus 6 months or 12 months? So yeah, that's a great question. Crystal ball time. Greg and I are going to go play the lottery next, but no, I would say, 500,000 doesn't get you what it used to. I mean, 500 used to be a great budget where you can buy anything, you want 5 or 6 years ago, for the most part. Now that's almost entry level in some of these areas. Finding like over in like, say, Laureate Park, like some of those houses used to be 300, now they're 450, just kind of like overnight. And so I think that if this trend continues, how much would it erode? I don't know. Do you have a major question on that? I think it would probably be, 10% less in a year from now than it would be. I think if we continue on this market, it's going to be about a 10% jump in the next year to 16 months. Wouldn't you think that's about fair?
Yeah, I'd agree with that on the real estate side. Of course, rates affect the buying power too. So if we can stay in a low rate environment, I mean, that helps. But yeah, I mean, I got to imagine that the real estate values are going to just continue to go up. I mean, I've had so many people talk to me through COVID, like, oh, I'm waiting for it to crash. I'm like, you still waiting? I mean, they keep going up, right? So and like we talked about in the beginning, like the market is so strong and stable and the demand's there. Yeah, I would say I agree with that, probably 10%.
Yeah, agreed. So we're going to wrap up here in about 2 more minutes. But hey, Greg, while people are putting their last comments for today, why don't you just tell them again how they can get a hold of you if they're looking to buy a house here in Central Florida for the mortgage side?
Yeah, definitely. So the best way to reach me is on my cell phone. You can call or text it. My number is 407-619-2488. And then also check me out on Instagram. That's where I post a ton of tips and just updates on mortgage interest rates and different loan programs and stuff. And my Instagram handle is @GregMatthewsMortgages.
Awesome, man. A couple more questions and then we're going to wrap up. So one, can you short-term vacation let all Orlando zip codes? So no, you can't. So that's a really great question. So certain areas you have to live in the house to rent out a bedroom or two. it's an interesting thing. Like, so for the city of Orlando, I don't know if you know this, Greg, but like you're allowed to rent out like 1/3 of your house.
I've heard that, like
So
Airbnb.
yeah. So if you got
I've heard that.
so if you got a three bedroom house, you can rent out 1 bedroom, but you have to live there while you do it. If you want to just do a straight short-term rental, like where that's all you do, then you're gonna have to look at places that are zoned for short-term rentals. So that's like Davenport, most of the area, West Kissimmee, that's like Reunion and Windsor Hills and some of these other places. And so, yeah, you definitely have to look into which ones are available. So we can, if you're like, hey, that's what we want to buy, we want to buy a short-term rental, let us know. And I'm happy to kind of give you a list of the areas. It's not by zip code. It would be really neighborhood specific. So yeah, good question. So Steven has a mortgage question for you, man. So it's using your credit card for everyday expenses up until you apply for a mortgage. Will that make a big impact on your loan?
It's a great question, Steven. So it really just depends on your overall credit usage. So a lot of people have the misconception that, hey, I have a $500 credit limit on my credit card. I'm spending $490 on it each month, but I'm paying it in full. That's a good thing. No, it's not, because you're using 95% of your usage. So if you have a $10,000 limit and you're only spending $3,000, that's a 30% usage. So even though you're spending more money, it's 3,000 out of 10,000 limit. That's better. So as long as you're keeping your usage within that 30% or lower range, then I would say continue to use your credit cards, because that's continuing to show the ability to use credit and pay it off responsibly. But yeah, if you're like near maxed out on whatever your limit is, get those balances down, keep them below 30% for sure.
Yeah, I think that's smart. You don't want the guy that goes out and buys a car right before closing, right? That's
like, don't take out any new debt, like no new credit cards, during that time. Always contact your loan officer first. But if you already have existing credit cards, you are fine to use them during the process. Just keep that usage under control. For sure. Here's another good question. Jerry asked, since you mentioned older houses, are there certain neighborhoods that you would recommend which might have better after repair value? So I think that, like, if you look at a lot of areas, you're going to probably lose a little bit of money on the rehab. If you go to like Windermere and you buy a $400,000 house that needs $100,000 in work, after repair value might only be $450, $460. So you're losing a little bit of money, but you got into a neighborhood in a great, school district, great layout, all these other kind of things, got exactly what you want for, essentially a lot easier, quote unquote, than going to do new construction. And as the market comes back up, you're going to pick up some of that value. Where you can make a bunch of money is like the downtown area. So like College Park, like even up in Winter Park is not really downtown, but like there's a lot of these older homes that were built, in the 50s, 60s, 70s that you can rehab and actually make a good amount of money back. Greg and I know somebody that bought a house with both of us, and people bought a little College Park home, completely rehabbed it, made a little bit of money on the sale. Those options are plentiful in comparison to like some of the more suburban areas where there's just a lot more housing stock that might need more like cosmetic updates instead of like complete rehabs, like some of these like older areas. So like downtown Orlando, Mount Dora, Winter Park, what other areas am I missing? Like some of those older 50, 60 year downtown Winter Garden, stuff like that. Yeah. I was going to say College Park is where you hit it spot on there, I think, for sure. Yep. Right on. All right, everybody. I think that is it for today. Thanks so much for spending some time with us on Saturday. It really does mean the world that, 123, 24 of you guys decided to hang out with us and watch this live. If you have questions, we do this every other week. So feel free to reach out to me with questions in the meantime. If not, we'll see you guys on the next live, and hopefully see you guys here in Orlando, right? Heck yeah. Come on down. Man. Yeah. Thanks for thank you for having me on, Ken. You're the man. For sure, man. Thanks for joining us today, man. It means a lot. Buddy. Yes, sir. Anytime.